Okay, so this time around we got something really, really interesting. Someone sent us this article, Small Minds and the Plantation Mentality. And wow, it's pretty hard hitting right off the bat.
Yeah, definitely grabs your attention, wasn't it?
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we really want to kind of break down what it's saying about, I guess, politics today, like how we all talk about it, where we put our attention, and what we maybe miss because of that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think that's at the heart of it. This whole idea of, are we really focused on the matters? It's a bold piece, not afraid to, step on some toes.
For sure.
And it uses this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt: "Small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, great minds discuss ideas."
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And it really uses that to kind of frame, like, okay, where are we now? Are we discussing the right things, the big ideas? It sets up a really fascinating look at how we do politics today.
So jumping right into that, the article kind of goes right into this idea that, well, it says, especially with the Trump administration, that there's this focus on personalities, right? It's like less about principles or systems and more about just the people involved, almost like a reality show kind of thing.
Yeah, and what the article is suggesting is maybe that's not an accident. Think about it.
Okay, yeah.
When you get everyone riled up about, who said what to who, all that drama, well, it keeps people focused on that, like super invested in the latest feud or scandal or whatever.
Right.
But maybe, and this is what the article argues, maybe while we're all caught up in that, we're missing the bigger picture, the actual systems at play, the policies that are actually affecting our lives. It's like you're so busy watching the fight, you don't see the stage is about to collapse.
Oh, I see what you mean. And it's not just about getting people on your side, right? The article also talks about how powerful resentment can be in politics. It uses the example of like how the Trump administration tapped into this feeling a lot of people had, towards people like Schumer, Pelosi, Hillary Clinton.
Right.
It even calls them power-happy slime balls, strong words. But then it kind of flips it and asks, okay, even if you agree with that, is that really the main thing we should be focused on?
Exactly. And I think what's important here is the idea that focusing so much on individuals, good or bad, can distract from the real issues. The article's saying, well, everyone's busy arguing about, whether so-and-so is a good person or a bad person, the actual structure of things, like, how our taxes work, how much power the government has, all that, it can kind of just keep chugging along in the background.
It's almost like a magic trick. Like, look over here, everyone's fighting. Meanwhile, something else is happening over there that you're not supposed to see.
Yeah, and that's what the article is getting at with this idea of the illusion of reform. It talks about Trump campaigning on a huge promise of change, but then argues that a lot of the systems, the core stuff, really didn't change that much.
It even gives the example of the tax cuts, right? Saying, yeah, there are these big tax cuts, but then at the same time, tariffs were going up, which ended up costing people more in other ways. So not really a change for a lot of people, the article argues.
Right, and it makes you think, what does real change even look like? Is it just about who's in charge, or is it about actually changing the way things work, the rules of the game, so to speak?
And speaking of the rules of the game, remember Drain the Swamp. That was like the big promise, right?
Yeah, huge.
But the article frames it almost as a performance. Like, sure, there's all this talk about getting rid of corruption, making government smaller, but then it argues the reality was kind of the opposite. More spending, maybe even more overreach in some ways.
And I think the takeaway here, and this is important for all of us, is to be wary of, just surface level change. Just because the faces change, the people in power, it doesn't mean the system itself has really changed.
So the system stays the same even if who's running it changes, is what you're saying.
Right, and that's a dangerous thing to overlook. We can get caught up in the personalities, the drama, and miss the fact that the underlying structure, the thing that's actually causing the problems, might still be there.
Now, the article gets into some really heavy stuff when it talks about authoritarian spectacle. And it uses this example of, like, rounding up people accused of crimes and sending them to Guantanamo, all without, the usual legal process.
Right, and that's a pretty stark example, and it's meant to be. The article's point here is that, we can't let fear or anger, even towards people we might think deserve it, override basic rights. Things like due process, presumption of innocence, those are the foundations of a just system.
So basically it's saying, even if we don't like the person, we have to be careful about letting the government just do whatever it wants, even to bad guys. Because if we do that, where does it stop?
Exactly, and it ties into this whole idea of hypocrisy and double standards, which the article also goes into. It's basically saying, look, a lot of people who are really against government overreach before suddenly seem okay with it when it's happening to people they don't like.
So it's like your principles should be the same no matter who's in power, right?
Yeah, the rules should apply to everyone equally. Otherwise, you're not really standing up for the rules, you're just standing up for your side.
Makes sense. Okay, so now we get to the big one. This is where the article gets its title from, The Plantation Mentality. It's a pretty powerful and honestly kind of disturbing analogy. What the article trying to say here?
Well, it uses the plantain as a metaphor for like the whole power structure of society, the overseer, that's the politicians in charge, the ones making the decisions, and the slaves, that's us, the regular people.
Okay, I'm following so far.
So the article says, imagine one overseer is really bad, corrupt, whatever, everyone hates him. Then he gets replaced with a new one, maybe someone who seems better, talks a good game, everyone's happy,
Like
right?
finally the bad guy's gone,
But
right?
the point is, even though the overseer changed, the plantation itself is still there. The whole system of, power imbalance, control, exploitation, it's still the same.
So even if the new guy's nicer, it doesn't mean anything really changed for the people on the bottom.
Right. And the article asks this really powerful question. Are we still slaves afterward? Obviously, it's not saying this literally. It's trying to make us think, did anything really change for the better, or did we just get a new boss for the same old system?
That's a pretty deep question. And it's making me think, even when we celebrate getting rid of a bad leader, we have to ask, did we change the system that created them in the first place?
Exactly. And from there, the article says, okay, what do we do about it? And it basically calls for like a shift in thinking. It says we have to stop being so focused on tribes, on just our side versus their side.
So less about the team you're on and more about what you believe in.
Right. The article says we should focus on the big principles: liberty, justice, individual rights, things that should matter no matter who's in charge. And it says both parties are guilty of using this tribalism to distract us from the real issues.
Keep us fighting each other so we don't notice what's really going on, huh?
Yeah, and in the end, the article actually gets specific and critiques Trump's support for Israel, even when there are concerns about human rights and stuff. It sees that as another example of this, like authoritarian tendency.
Using public emotion, maybe fear or anger towards Israel's enemies, to justify doing things that might not be right.
Exactly, and it all goes back to that idea of looking beyond the surface, not just reacting to who we like or dislike, but really thinking about what's right and wrong, what kind of world we want to live in.
So for everyone listening, I think the big takeaway here is don't just go with your gut. It's easy to get caught up in the personalities, the drama, but we have to think critically. Ask ourselves, what are my principles? And am I applying them consistently, no matter who's in power?
Absolutely. And beyond that, think about the systems. Are we just changing who's running things, or are we changing the way things are run? Because that's what really matters in the long run.
It's definitely a lot to think about. So after all this, the question I'll leave you with is, what are the systems, the big structures in our society that need to change? Not just who's running them, but the systems themselves. And how can we, each of us, start focusing on that, on the real issues, instead of just getting caught up in the latest political fight? It's not easy, but it's something we all need to be thinking about.
I agree. It's a challenge, but it's one worth taking on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. It's been a real eye-opener, that's for sure.